Hello, and welcome to the Booktube Chicks Book Club live discussion. Today, I am here with my friends Desiree and Kathleen. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second. And we are going to be discussing Gilded by Marissa Meyer tonight. This was our November book pick, and I'm really pumped to talk about this book with you guys. So, Desiree, would you like to go first in introducing yourself and doing your initial thoughts?
So my name is Desiree. I am from the channel Libri Labra, and you can find me at Libri Labra on all the things. And so, I enjoy most Marissa Meyer's book, although Chloe will probably be sad to know that I didn't finish the Lunar Chronicles. I wasn't sure what to expect going into this. I knew it was a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, but I don't think I expected where it went. So, I think it's different. It's intriguing. It left on quite a bit of a cliffhanger. I don't feel like for such a large book, I felt like there should have been a little bit more before we got to the end in regards to what was going to happen next. But overall, I enjoyed it, and I kind of went back and forth between reading the book itself and listening to the audiobook, and I know that I don't always process audiobooks that well, so you're probably going to be filling in some holes for me as we have this discussion, but I think I would probably give it 5 stars. I definitely want to know what happens in the next book. I don't know if this is a trilogy or duology or what it's supposed to be.
So I believe this is a duology, because Chloe mentioned it before, but I could be wrong. Hi, my name is Kathleen. My channel is For the Love of Books. I finished this book a few days ago. I'm not sure what I'm going to rate it. I love most of Marissa Meyer's books. I did not like Instant Karma that much, but most of her retellings I really, really enjoy. I really liked this book. I just don't know how I feel about the ending necessarily, so I don't really know what I'm...
You muted yourself somehow.
Oh. Anyways, I don't know where I left off. I love most of Marissa Meyer's books. I am... The only one I didn't quite enjoy was Instant Karma. I really did like this book. I enjoyed it. I'm just not sure how I feel about the ending necessarily, so I don't think I'll give it a 5 stars, because for me, a 5 star is very clearly a 5-star book for me. So it'll most likely be a 4 or 4.5. I like the direction that she took with how she did Rumpelstiltskin. It's kind of like what you mentioned, Desiree. I really did not expect on the direction that she went, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I never read a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, so this was my first, and I'm really glad it was a Marissa Meyer that I read as far as a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next book, because it's like you said, it did leave on a cliffhanger.
Okay, and my name is Chloe, and you guys are on my channel, Brunette Bibliophile. It's most of my social media is mostly Brunette Bibliophile. I was so excited for this book. I love Marissa Meyer's work. I love almost all of her books, and I was really excited for her return to fairy tales. Some people may know one of my favorite shows is Once Upon a Time, and my favorite character on there was Rumpelstiltskin. So I was very excited to be reading a Rumpelstiltskin retelling that was different from another retelling that I had seen and mostly know. And I didn't know what to expect from this book. I pretty much went in blind, and I was very pleasantly surprised. When I reached the end, I was bouncing between a 4.5 and a 5, and I ended up on a 5-star just because I really couldn't find anything that I disliked about the book, and I found myself really enjoying it the whole time. And it also ended up being really like darker than I expected it to be, um, especially towards the ending. And I just ended up really, really enjoying it, and I'm really excited for the next book. To answer Desiree's question, it is a duology, and they just released the title and synopsis of the next book. I think it's called Cursed or Curses. I want to say it's Cursed. But I'm really excited to read that one probably this time next year. And just I'm really excited that Marissa Meyer is back in the retellings game. So if you all have never seen one of our live shows before, what we normally do is initial thoughts, which is what we just finished up with, and we're actually going to go into a spoiler discussion, I think, starting now. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then I suggest maybe coming back to this live show at a later date. But we're going to go ahead and just dive right in. So what do you guys want to talk about first?
I would really appreciate it if one of you could give me like a short summary so that I understand like all the threads and I can connect them. Just like there's a lot of unconnected threads is what I'm saying. Kat, you're
Like-
muted.
You want a summary of the book?
Yes. Like
Girl,
very,
there's a
very
lot. You need to give
Like
us
the book
like,
that you just read.
like
there's a lot.
bare bones.
We can't give you.
Like, okay.
Okay, so there's a hunt.
Mm-hmm.
The wild hunt. It happens every month. Okay, and one day there's these two woodland creatures, magical creatures, I'm assuming, and they are being hunted by the wild hunt. And Sorilda, whatever her name is, she decides to help them. She hides them in her cellar where she and her dad keeps their vegetables. And the wild hunt comes by, and they're like, "Where are they? You know, they came through here." And she lies because she's blessed by the god of stories. She's blessed, which a lot of people tend to also associate as the god of lies,
Mm-hmm.
because she can just out of nowhere just come up with these stories. So she spins a lie saying she didn't see them, and she says that she was blessed by the god Helga, and this basically letting them know that she can spin straw into gold, and that's where she gets in trouble because now the king of the wild hunt, he's interested. So next time around, he comes for her, and he locks her in this cellar in this big abandoned castle, and tells her there's this big piles of straw. You need to spin these straws into gold. Obviously, she can't do that. She's blessed by the god of stories, of lies, and not whatever she told him. Right. And there appears Gilded, who is
Rumpelstiltskin, essentially.
Rumpelstiltskin, yes, and he helps her by spinning the straw into gold. Now, in the original Rumpelstiltskin, she has to give him, the same with this story, she has to give him payment. Now, those two little woodland creatures that she saved, they each, because it was two of them, they each gave her a payment. They gave her a necklace and they gave her a ring. So on the first night that she's imprisoned by the king to spin straw into gold, she gives Gilded the necklace. The next night, she gives him the ring.
But like, what was the king's end game? Because he was using the straw to trap the magical creatures.
Correct.
And he was using the magical creatures.
So what he wants, ultimately, what Sorilda finds out is that he wants to trap a god, because if you manage to capture a god, you get a wish. And a long time ago, we find this out at the very end, that Gilded was actually a prince. He was the prince of this abandoned castle, and he killed the king's lover. He killed the lover, and the king at the time, this guy, he's always had whatever he wanted, and he's never suffered loss. So when he lost his lover, he basically flew into a blind rage, and he killed all of Gilded's family, and he made everybody and Gilded himself forget who he is. So nobody knows who he is. He doesn't even himself know who he is.
Okay, so he wants to trap the god to get the wish to bring back his lover.
Correct.
Okay, yes. All right. That's all I need to know. But like, man, this dude's like really evil. Like, what is the whole point?
Not gonna lie, like halfway through the book, I was kind of hoping he would be the love interest until I realized that Gild is the love interest, and I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this because I was going down one road, but we're definitely going down this road.
See, and I was kind of like playing around with that idea a little bit when I had first started listening to it. Because I remember telling you, Kat, that I figured the love interest was going to go one way, but I didn't know if there was going to be some like jacked love triangle or something like that between like the villain.
Yeah, and on the original Rumpelstiltskin retelling, it's kind of like the ending. She does marry the king, although I think the king wasn't necessarily as evil as in the story. And Rumpelstiltskin was kind of like the bad guy in a way, in the original telling. So that's why I was kind of leaning towards the king being the ultimate love interest. But in a way, I'm kind of glad that Gild or Rumpelstiltskin, whatever you want to call him, ended up being the love interest. So
Yeah, I kind of saw where it was going a little bit for one of the subplots.
which one?
The pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as it was like the fade to black, I was like, she's gonna be pregnant. Like it's gonna happen. And I was surprised it took that long. Like it was the last, like I'd say like 50 pages maybe. But it was definitely something that had crossed my mind when I was listening to it.
I know I'm jumping ahead a bit by talking about possibly the next book, but in the original Rumpelstiltskin telling the story, she doesn't want to give her firstborn child to Rumpelstiltskin, and she tries so hard to figure out his name in order not to give Rumpelstiltskin the child because it's hers. But I think in the next book, where I'm assuming is leading up to, is that she's gonna not just try to keep her child safe from the king, not necessarily Rumpelstiltskin, but from the king. But I think she has another reason for wanting to find out what his name is, which is to set him free. Because the curse is that until somebody says his name, nobody will ever know. The curse will continue. Nobody will know who he is. Nobody will remember who he is. So it's kind of like she took that curse from the original story. Well, I don't know if it's a curse. It's the blood magic, the promise, whatever. And she kind of put it a nice spin where we want a happy ending for Rumpelstiltskin, as opposed to we want him to die because he's trying to take, my firstborn child kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's going in a direction to where she like yes, she will have to give not the king, but have to give Gild her firstborn, but it probably won't matter because they'll end up together anyway. So at this point, it's keeping the child away from the king.
And I'm not gonna say I sympathize with the king because he is really, really evil, and I'm not saying that before his lover died he was any better. But I actually, in a way, sort of understand why he is the way he is, like why he's so evil. Because the story specifically says he never suffered loss before until his lover died. And I can't imagine, because she was the one person he loved the most. The story goes into detail that she was the one that he loved the most, and for him to suffer her loss, like he was probably already evil, it made him 100 times more evil. So I kind of understand the direction of like how the king became such a horrible person.
So Desiree, I know you were texting me earlier about trying to figure out how Cyrilda was pregnant from a ghost. Did the last 10 minutes at least answer that question for you?
Yeah, but like the whole time I was like, what is going on here? Like, how is he touching her? How are
I
they
thought
like
that
doing
too.
anything? Like,
I kept thinking, are we having another Twilight moment here? I can't. I was like, I never understood how Edward was able to sire a child, but we're not getting into that.
but 'cause this is YA, right? I don't know why this felt so adult to me.
It is YA, but I'm not gonna lie, there's like this trope. I remember watching Cattastic, or whatever you pronounce her channel name. She talked about how most YA books will gloss over the sex, which is what happened here, but they have no problem going over into details about the violence. And this book was the prime example. There were moments that was very, very violent, like there was graphic description of the violence, but
There are so many descriptions of kids' hearts being ripped out.
exactly. And I was like, and then they just casually glossed over the sex scene, and I'm like, this is such a typical YA book of that trope.
I didn't realize they had sex until she was like, I'm pregnant.
Dang,
Like,
Desiree.
What?
I mean, it's pretty
Ow!
clear, but
I
okay.
heard her saying something about, oh, we had a roll in the hay, but I thought she was just joking. I didn't realize that like they actually did something.
I mean, it was pretty much implied. And then the next scene is like he's putting I remember her putting her clothes back on. And then I remember the specific scene where he kissed each of her shoulders. And that's how you kind of know.
I guess it was too fade to black to me. It just sounded like innocent smooching.
You know, hold on. I need to gather my thoughts. Somebody else go for me.
I just like, I don't know. It felt like there was kind of a lot in this book, and the whole thing was like 500 pages. And I wouldn't say it was necessarily slow, but there was just a lot. Like, the king obviously being a jerk is its whole thing. Like, you know, the residents of the castle previously and who the owners of the castle were, who that royalty was. The fact that Gild can spin the gold, the fact that she has this special power too, where she can tell stories, and then all these magical animals. But then to have like all these witches and just, I don't know. I feel like all the terrorizing of the children wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I definitely
I
felt
mean,
like the book was really dark with that.
I don't necessarily agree with you. I think she was too violent, yes. However, the book goes into it's pretty clear at how much she cares about the kids, because the kids are the only ones who will approach her and treat her like a human being. Everyone else is very suspicious and treats her like trash. So the book goes into details of how much she cares about her kids, and her dad already died, so clearly there's no one else she cares about except for the children. So the fact that he is so evil and he used the children to get back at her makes sense to me. I also, but I do agree it was a little bit too violent.
Yeah, and the dad like turning into some like weird like zombie thing, like that, I feel like that was graphic, and like she was scarred now.
Yeah, the whole thing with the dad, I'm like, what is happening? Like, like? I don't get that part. Like, did he turn into a zombie? Is that what happened?
I mean, there's a different name for it, but yeah, that's what it sounded like.
It's essentially what happened. Okay, I was
That
like,
was how I understood it.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I was just making sure. I was like, what is happening?
It felt like a Walking Dead moment. And then she froze because you just go through something when you're like, how do I kill this thing when it was my dad or whatever.
So I want to know if you guys thought the same thing when you were listening to it. So the first time she comes from the ruins of the castle after the first night that she's met Gild, the way it sounded, I would have to go back and see it again, but the way it sounded was I thought she had come out of the castle in like a different time. Like,
I thought that too.
okay.
I was thinking that like the first time when she got up and everything was in ruins, I was like, did she jump in time? Did she go back in time? Did she go forward in time? I thought that too, but then it explained why. But I definitely got that vibe, and I think that would have
Yeah,
been cool to read from if she was like jumping back in time too.
yeah, because I thought she had gone like 100 years forward in time, and I was like, "What is happening?" But then when she was reunited with her dad, I kind of like everything fell into place, and I was like, "Okay, so she just like ends up in this other town or whatever."
I don't know. There was like a few parts where she was like telling stories, and I thought that that's what was happening during that. I didn't recognize it as a jump in time, or that's not how I was seeing it, I guess.
Yeah, and the stories themselves are like a completely other thing because like those were so intricate in my opinion that sometimes I would kind of forget that it was a story until like she came back to her present. What do we want to talk about next?
I'm sorry. I'm like low energy today.
I'm
I
just
tried
kind
to
of like
have some coffee,
riffing
but it
off of
didn't
you
help.
guys here.
Um, for a 500-page book, I kind of feel like we didn't get enough of Gild. Like, she had her moments with him, but I feel like he was just always off somewhere else. I don't know. I would have liked to have seen like more of him woven into the story. I'm sure there'll be like more of him in the next book.
Yeah, I was gonna say I expect to see a lot more of him in the next book since she's cursed to be in this castle until her wedding or whatever, however that's gonna go. Um, but I know what you mean. There's a lot of like outside elements as opposed to being in the castle since the castle only happened once a month.
Okay.
Also, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of digging how like the book is separated into like the different moons and um and like how they had that like the special day where they did like the feast and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was cool visually and
And like even for a 500-page book, I mean, this is probably mostly because I listened to it when we were going to and from Charleston, but I found that the book was going very quickly, and I really enjoyed that. And I think that is something that Marissa Meyer is really good at is her pacing. Um, because I've also been rereading the Lunar Chronicles, and about a week or two before I read this one, I had just finished Cress. So I feel like, she's really good at pacing, even if it's a 500-page book.
I actually agree with you. I listened to this book on audiobook. I don't have the physical copy because I hate the original cover, so I'm hoping that the Verily cover is a prettier version. So, with me, I get distracted very easily. So to listen to an audiobook took me extra long because I had to rewind a lot. Because if I miss if I get distracted for 30 seconds, I gotta go back. Otherwise, it's gonna bug me that I missed something important. Um, so to me, I felt like it's kind of like you said, her pacing's very good to the point where I didn't actually feel that this book was 500 pages. Yes, it was a 15, 16-hour audiobook, but to me, it did not feel that way. It did not feel like a long book at all. If anything, it actually felt like when I got to the end and everything happened, I was like, no, you need to continue because we need to find out what happened. So I do agree with you. She does have very good pacing. She doesn't rush, and I really appreciate that because sometimes when you want to with these retellings, while you are hoping that your readers do have some kind of sense of what the original story is, you still have to build the world. And I feel like she did a really good job with the world building and making sure that nothing is just thrown at you or told to you really quickly, which I do feel like some authors need to work on. But she did a very good job at keeping the pace and making sure that we're engaged and interested. Um, and like I said, it didn't feel like 500 pages to me.
Did the situation with her like looking for her mom, did that just remain open-ended throughout the whole thing?
I think so. I don't remember it ever being resolved. I remember Guild
Yeah,
saying
I
he
think
was
it
going to
was.
look for it, but I don't remember if it was resolved.
I think it was left open-ended, and I think that'll probably be a subplot of the next book. I actually forgot about it until you just said it. But I don't remember it being solved.
When did you say the next book is supposed to come out?
It's November of next year. I want to say it was the 8th, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, she releases books every November, so it'll be next November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's November 8th of next year.
I wonder
what's the name? What's the name of the book?
It's called Cursed.
I wonder how they decide whether to make it a duology or a trilogy or a dystology or whatever.
Like, I mean, like,
because like a 500-page book is like really big, and you know that people are going to buy it because it's Marissa Meyer. I'm just wondering like why they were like, yeah, let's do 2 500-page books versus 300 pages each or whatever.
I mean, I don't know how it works. Is it the publisher who decides that, or is it ultimately the author? Because I'm assuming with Marissa Meyer, being so big, she can decide whether she wants to write.
Because I remember like I went to go see her speak at Barnes and Noble once, and she was talking about how she was writing. I think it was supposed to be a duology, but it turned into a trilogy, and she was making it sound like those things were just changing as she was writing. So I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is just like what she decided.
I don't remember what author it was, but it was something similar to that, where the original author wanted to write a duology, but because the world kept expanding as she was writing, she decided to go ahead and do a third book. I'm assuming that's how it works, but I don't know how it works with newer authors. I'm assuming with Marissa Meyer, she gets to decide, hey, I just want to write a duology on this book, and then the publisher can't necessarily force her to write a third book. I'm assuming with newer authors who don't have as much say in their contracts, they can be more persuaded to write more or less books in a series.
I mean, I'm no Marissa Meyer, but the way I feel is like you kind of just write until the story is out. And I think there's like a certain stopping point where you're like, this would be good, to end the first book, I guess. Because for me, like with this, I didn't really think about it before until you had said something, but it really did feel like the first half of a story, and ending on such a cliffhanger like that. There's like the next book is going to be full of its own problems with and it's going to be completely different from like just lying to the king and saying I can spin straw into gold when I really can't. It's going to be a whole slew of trying to stop this wedding, trying to stop him from trying to catch a god, because that was such a small piece of this book that it's probably going to be a gigantic thing in the next book.
I guess, like, for me, what I would have expected to be in this book is, like, I guess her figuring out his name and maybe bringing him back to life or whatever, or like, ending the curse. And then the next book would start with, okay, now he's a prince again. Now what are they going to do? Now how is he going to reclaim everything? Like, how is he going to fight the...
I get what you're saying. However, I feel like if that were to happen in this book, there wouldn't be much content left over for the second book, in my opinion, because him saying the name is the biggest part of breaking his curse. And once he breaks his curse, he can, do what he did with his lover, which is kill. I mean, it's not gonna be easy, but kill the wild. And the whole second book can't just be about him trying to kill the king. It would just be a very boring book, in my opinion. So I agree with what you're saying, because I did want a happy ending for Gild. I did want him to be free to be with Cerilda, but I feel like there wouldn't be much left over for the second book.
I kind of want to pivot for a second and kind of just give props to the narrator of the audiobook. Because as far as I know, she has done, I want to say she's done all of Marissa Meyer's audiobooks. I'm pretty sure the Lunar Chronicles too. I can't remember off the top of my head. But she is just such a good narrator. And I feel like Marissa Meyer is so lucky to have her reading her books, because she does such a good job and she always does such amazing voices. Like I didn't listen to Heartless, but I heard that Heartless, like, it's amazing with all the voices that she does. So I just want to give props to the audiobook narrator for a second.
I agree with you, except for the ending where Cerilda is going crazy because he's killing the children. She lets her voice get very shrilly, and like when you're listening to audiobook, I'm just like, her voice gets very aggravating. Like her imitating a Cerilda shrilly voice gets very aggravating. But I agree with you. She's actually an amazing narrator.
Her name is Rebecca Soler, by the way. Or Soler. I don't know how you would pronounce that.
Part of me wants to listen to her do the Lunar Chronicles, but the other part of me has a specific voice for all the characters, like, that's been so ingrained in my head that I don't want to ruin it for myself, because I will it'll be forever changed for me. But I'm open to rereading.
She did do the Lunar Chronicles though.
She did or didn't?
Mm-hmm. She did.
See, but that's the thing is, I don't want to listen to the audiobooks and ruin the voice that I've created in my head.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you haven't listened to those audiobooks. All right.
No, I've only physically read them.
Okay. She also narrated Once Upon a Broken Heart.
Oh, that's the Stephanie Garber book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should listen to the audiobook of that.
And Caraval.
I don't have an interest in reading Caraval, but I have an interest in Once Upon a Broken Heart for some reason.
You're not missing anything on Caraval.
So I've heard, which is another reason why I'm not.
I mean, some people really love it, and I'm not trying to poke a dig at it, but it personally, it wasn't for me. So.
What else would we like to talk about Gilded?
I just want to make a comment. There were some moments in the book where um, the narrator would, or the writer, Marissa Meyer, described as Guild as looking impish or like acting impish, and I thought that was just interesting because in the original Rumpelstiltskin, he was an imp. So I was like, huh, that's kind of like a little neat little thing that she put in there for him looking impish because in the original story he was an imp. So
Yeah, I never actually looked into the original story. Um and my exposure to Rumpelstiltskin, besides Once Upon a Time, he's also whichever Shrek movie he appeared in. So I have like very little exposure to the classic fairy tale, but I kind of want to keep it that way because I like seeing all these different iterations, especially like with Once Upon a Time, because all the fairy tales are so like layered and woven, and it gets really complicated at some point that it's just, I don't know. I just like seeing the all the different ways that it's done.
I feel like that's such a, I don't know, like an iconic story, like the girl having to say that she was willing to give up her firstborn. I feel like we still use that all the time.
and I feel like, so in the original Rumpelstiltskin story, he was the one who said, "You will give me your firstborn child, and I will do this for you." But in this story, she's the one who suggested, and like I'm not someone who wants kids, but she was very quick to give up. Oh, hey, I'll give you my firstborn kid. Here you go. And I'm just like, why is that the first thing that pops into your head? Like, I just felt like she was very nonchalant about it. It's like, oh yeah, I'll give you my first kid. I'm like, girl, you need to think about this. I mean, it is Guild, but you need to think about this. You know, it's a pretty big deal.
Well, I think what's kind of interesting is that in the original, she didn't sleep with Rumpelstiltskin.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm assuming she does it because she knows that in this version, in this retelling, Guild is a good person, and again, she's the one who's. I just thought it was odd that she suggested it. I was like, hey, I'll give you my firstborn
But
kid.
maybe
You
it was
know?
just a complete and total spin to be like, maybe it was
Well,
foreshadowing of like that
I
they
have
were going to do it. They were going to roll in the hay.
a couple of things for both of your points. Um, for Kat, I feel like she Cyrilda was so like she's like, I'm gonna be a spinster for the rest of my life because nobody trusted her, nobody wanted to be with her. She was bad luck, all this stuff. So I think that's why, because she didn't think she would ever have kids. And then to kind of go off of Desiree's point, and I'm gonna keep referencing Once Upon a Time because it's all I know. But in in the fairy tales are all like layered and intertwined, and it's complicated. But there was an arc of where it was like a traditional Rumpelstiltskin, and there was the miller's daughter, and she had lied to the king, and blah blah blah, and he showed up, and they had done the contract for the firstborn child, but then later on he was like, "How about I change the contract and it'll be our firstborn child?" And it was like a whole thing. So that's what I kind of got from that. There was some connections there.
I mean,
How
I
did
see what you're saying. I just like I think also the narrator might have not helped things. She just made it seem like Cerilda was just it's but it's kind of like what Chloe said. She didn't think she would ever have kids. So she was just like, "Hey, have my firstborn kid. I don't know if I'm going to have a firstborn kid anyway, but here you go. I'll promise to give it to you anyways." Um but I just thought it was funny. It made me chuckle to myself.
Can you remind me how she figured out that she was pregnant? Because it felt like it was just like a light bulb going off.
So when she was on the in the end when the king brought her and he wanted her to spend gold in front of everybody, she was trying to come up with a lie to get out of that, and then at that moment she realized that she hadn't had her period in over a month. Like she, in that one moment, she realized, "Hey, I might be pregnant. I'm late." And like, I'm like, that's very lucky for you to remember at the very second. But yeah,
Yeah, I was definitely texting Chloe, like, wait a minute. She's pregnant by a ghost. Is that what's happening right now?
Oh, what was I gonna say? Hold on, I forgot. Oh, I did think it was interesting though that when they made the deal, she had to say like, I swear to stay alive long enough to give you the firstborn child, blah 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 blah. But like, what if it was beyond her control? Like, what if somebody killed her, or what if like she got like
wait,
sick and
who?
died? Like, what
To
happens?
Guild or to the king?
Like she said that to Guild, like, I swear to stay alive long enough to give you my firstborn or whatever. Like, what if it's beyond your control? Then what happens?
I feel like not just, I mean, this is like something that I saw not that long ago, so it kind of sticks out in my mind, but I'm sure it's popped up in fantasy over the years. But this idea that with magic there has to be balance. It was kind of in The Witcher. I think they did a good job of explaining and kind of demonstrating what that means. And so that was woven into the story. Like, I think she made it really clear that it wasn't that Guild wanted to take payment, it was that he had to, because there had to be some kind of a balance for the magic that he was using. So I would imagine if something happened to where she couldn't deliver on her end, magic would find a way to balance itself out. Like something else would happen to restore the balance.
Now
Maybe
that'd be
like
interesting because what is magic gonna keep her corpse alive until it brought out the baby? Because it just
No, I think like if the payment was lost and something would happen, then the straw would turn back into straw,
oh, okay.
something
Yeah,
something
that's what
along
I was
those
gonna
lines.
say.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I was like, gold's probably just gonna turn back and. Did we have anything else we wanted to talk about with Gilded?
I know personally, I just really like to hear from authors like why they decided to explore certain stories. And I know Marissa Meyer just loves fairy tales in general. And so that's where she draws a lot of her inspiration. But I might try to seek out maybe an interview or something where she talks about why she chose Rumpelstiltskin now, or
I want to say, try the Fierce Reads YouTube. She did like a virtual event that I only kind of half listened to, but she read the original story of Rumpelstiltskin in there, and I think she also talked about like the inspiration behind this, but I just can't remember off the top of my head. But try that because she talked about it a lot in there.
I'm not gonna lie. Marissa Meyer does a really good job with retellings, like Heartless. Um, I feel like it's a retelling that not a lot of people talk about, but it's a book that stuck with me. I don't know if you read Heartless, Desiree. You should, because the ending um, of why she goes mad sticks with you. It stuck with me, and I was like, when I read, I was like, oh my god, no. Um, but she's like, not so much with this book, but I feel like in her retellings, like she draws out emotion in that book. Just like for me personally, it's a book that really shows a good job of how does a good job of showing how talented she is in weaving these original fairy tales into her own version.
I think that Heartless is going to end up being on my reread list for next year, because it has been so long since I originally read it. And while I do remember some points to it, I feel like it would be a really good reread. Like how I'm doing the Lunar Chronicles right now, because I haven't read those since my original read through. God only knows how long ago.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too. I mean, I read that book when the Biblio Squad was still together. Like that was one of our book picks of the month.
Yeah, I think my on Goodreads, my original read through of Cress was 2014, I think. And I just did my second ever reread of it this past month. So it's been a long time. But like the Marissa Meyer books are something that, I just love to go back to because they're so fun. And she's just an auto buy author for me, and I will buy anything that she writes at this point.
Did we want to do final thoughts?
I was gonna say, is there anything else we would like to talk about? Whoever wants to do final thoughts or anything else they want to talk about first can go.
Okay. Final thoughts. I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. I think the ending obviously ends on a cliffhanger. But the way it ends, I'm assuming the next book is going to be super explosive, and that's when um, things will get interesting. I mean, this whole book was a wild ride, but I think that Marissa Meyer did a really good job in taking elements from the original fairy tale and weaving it into her own, but still kind of sticking to the magic of what made the original story so cool. So I really enjoyed this book just because the ending wasn't necessarily like my favorite, even though I feel like it was a good ending. It wasn't my favorite ending ever. I am gonna give this book like a 4.5 stars. Um, but it's a really good retelling, and it is very indicative of how good Marissa Meyer is as a uh, fairy tale retelling author.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I give it 5 stars. I was like invested, and I'm sad that I missed pieces of it because of listening to the audiobook, because that could be challenging. But just giving me that very, very basic summary helped me put everything all together. So I look forward to the next book. And whether it's 500 pages or not, I'm sure she will do it justice. So
I gave this book 5 stars. I was so excited to listen to the audiobook and to just read the book in general. And I am very excited for the next one to come out. I think this is probably like one of the darkest things, if not the darkest thing that Marissa Meyer has ever written. But it shows that she has range, even when it's all just fairy tale. She has range, and I like that. Um, so I'm really excited to read the next book. And yeah, I'm happy that this book exists. And like Kat, I am also waiting for my Fairy Loot copy to come. Um, so that being said, we will quickly talk about December, um, the last month of 2021. I can't believe it's already here. Um, I don't have a copy of this book because it seems to be sold out everywhere, and my library copy is also taking forever. Um, but we are going to be reading Written in the Stars by Alexandra Belfleur. I'm 90% sure I said the last name wrong. But this is a rom-com, I believe. And I'm really excited to have Kat read a rom-com. It's about time. Um, but yes, this is what we will be reading in December. And let me get the live show date really quick. We are going to talk about it in a live show on December 19th at 6 p.m. on this channel. And I am very excited to read this. I have heard great things about this book, and it'll be a first from this author for me. So that is all we have for this evening's book club discussion. So thank you to anyone and everyone who joined this evening. And yeah, that's all we have. So we will see you guys on December 19th to discuss Written in the Stars. Bye.